Today in studio, we sit down with Pascal and Nicolas Wiscour-Conter, a father and son duo working in strategic communication and design in Luxembourg. I first met Pascal and Nicolas at the 1535 Creative Hub in Differdange, where they joined a panel to discuss the future of AI, hosted by Christian Horsberg of the Creative Industries Cluster and colleagues from the National Competence Center. In response to the moderator's question, is AI friend or foe? Their response of AI will challenge us to be fundamentally human intrigued me. I wanted to know more about who they are and what field they worked and how it came to be that they spoke such good English. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Would you kindly introduce yourselves to our audience? How is it that you are both local and expatriate alike? Let's begin with you, Pascal.
Yes, well, I guess it's a long story that I'll cut very short, and it's originating because of me. So I'm from Luxembourg, but I've been away for 20 years, and I was an entrepreneur. I have been an entrepreneur, launching a crazy idea of having a maritime register for mega yachts in Luxembourg, and that's how I ended up in Monaco for 12 years. And then after that, I had another weird idea that we should have a software to manage those big yachts, and that's how I ended up in California. And then I fell into the world of the startups, and I just put myself at the service of the startups, and that's how I ended up in New York. And then I came back to get a new visa and move back, and then we stayed because the timing was poor. It was the COVID lockdown.
So that's how you wound up in Luxembourg.
That's exactly how I came back. And so, yes, what have I done? So as an entrepreneur, obviously you need to evangelize when you try to convince people to register a yacht in a country that doesn't even have an access to the sea. So that was the first connection with communication. And it's actually something I really enjoy and discovered that there's tools and there's methodology behind the whole system. So I dived very deeply into that, also associating it with strategy. And that's one of the things that I'm doing now back in Luxembourg. So when people ask me, I tell them I'm in the craft of connecting. I connect people, I connect ideas, and I connect values. And one way of doing that is, for instance, sharing. So I'm a teacher, for instance, in an MBA program and in different other business schools about strategic communication. I also do workshops. I write about these matters. I'm working on my first book for that. And there's a number of other initiatives that I contribute to. I recently also joined the team of the TEDx Luxembourg City, with also plans there to enhance and do more things. In a nutshell, it's about trying to see how I can have an impact helping local communities and make things perhaps evolve in a faster way.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So how about you, Nico? Would you kindly introduce yourself to our audience? How is it that you are both local and expatriate alike?
So I was born here in Luxembourg, and then we moved away when I was just a few months old. So my entire life I grew up abroad, mixed between Monaco and then the US. And then in the US I discovered a passion for animation, 3D animation specifically. So I decided to go to the Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia in the US. And I studied animation and graphic design and also a bit of filmmaking. In the hopes of going to, Pixar, Disney, those kind of companies. However, when I finished my degree, I realized that I couldn't see myself working in that industry, that it just wasn't for me. So I decided to take some experience I had in marketing and actually pivot to a marketing industry. And I worked for a couple years with a firm in the US to work on B2B campaigns, mainly creating visuals for those campaigns, which was super interesting and taught me a lot. And when I came back here to Luxembourg in 2022, I started to get involved a bit more with the SME and startup ecosystem here in Luxembourg, and I started really seeing an opportunity to maybe do something, and that's where I decided to create my own business, helping SMEs and startups with visuals and communication needs, I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you. Here at Soveryn Podcast, we address solutions. Sometimes we refer to those as pain points and the solutions that the independents bring. Would you tell us more about how you address challenges for your community with your services? Pascal, you have mentioned to me once that you work with words and your son works with images. Tell us a bit about what you do.
Yeah, so strategic communication, there's two components, obviously, the word says it. A lot of people think of communication and do not realize how much there can be behind it. And in my particular case, I used communication as a tool as an entrepreneur and to promote my businesses and the things that I was working on. until I realized that there's much more behind it, and I started to dive into it. And then I discovered, when I was in California and in New York, storytelling. And I was fortunate enough also in New York to really be involved with professional storytelling and writers' rooms, and see that there was a whole different world behind there, and different techniques. And the other thing I discovered was that it works best when it's connected to a purpose, to something that is meaningful, which is perhaps counterintuitive. And so I dived into that. And what I'm trying today to do is twofold, because as I came back from New York, and it was not planned, I also experienced a very strange situation of a Luxembourger having been away for 20 years and all of a sudden feeling like an expat. And the lockdown obviously was completely magnifying this situation. And I thought, I'm one of the only ones perhaps who's a Luxembourger who was raised here and at the same time feels like an expat. I need to do something about it. What can I do about it? And obviously communication was one of the things that came to mind, but it was also because the purpose was to bring the communities together. How can I serve in a meaningful way, have an impact, helping perhaps some communities get closer together, or people that come to Luxembourg better understand how Luxembourg functions, or perhaps even help Luxembourgers better see that expats, so-called expats, can have a different perspective on certain things, and communication is a wonderful tool. So the value proposition, if you want, today is really to say, do you actually understand why you're communicating? Whether I'm teaching this as a class or doing workshops or working with customers, it's all about always saying, why do we even want to communicate, and going deep there into the roots of the whole thing. And I actually use the metaphor of a tree, where I show people to say, look, if your tree doesn't have roots, then your trunk can be as big as you want, that the value proposition can be as big as you want. But if you do not root it into something solid, something meaningful, something that's appealing firsthand to you, then you will never come across as very authentic. And so you will not easily convince an audience, not even your internal audience. By internal, I mean your workforces.
Thank you. Okay, Nico, following on from your father, he had said to me earlier that he works with words and you work with images. Tell us about your work in design communication.
Yeah, so obviously with my background in 3D animation and graphic design, it kind of felt natural that I ended up going in more the visual aspect of marketing. Something that I really noticed here when I came back and started getting involved in the ecosystem is that, you know, when you're an SME or a startup, you're kind of, when you need a visual or something for a marketing campaign, you kind of have two options. Either you go to a marketing agency, which is going to have maybe like a certain reputation, a certain history. They're going to have a certain rapport with you. And the quality of work you're going to get is usually going to be pretty high quality. However, the issues with that is that it's, you know, pretty expensive and you're kind of limited in the relationship you have with them. And on the other side, you can go to a freelancer, which is going to be more flexible. You're going to be able to maybe get lower rates, but the quality, you're not always going to be sure of it until you get the results. And also the way you work with that person is going to be very different because they might be in a different country. They might have a different system to you. So it's, I felt like there was really a gap in the market in terms of visual expertise in marketing. And that's where my business kind of comes in, trying to be a bridge between those two solutions and offer affordable rates with a certain follow-through and a good relationship, but also allowing, you know, the companies that come and talk to me, the clients I work with, to have a certain autonomy, to be able to still work independently from me and not necessarily have to go through me for every single decision, you know, providing them the work, and then they can choose whether I do all of it or if maybe they want to take part of it on themselves, or if they want me to teach them how to do it. Because for me, it's more important to share the knowledge than to just do it for them. So that's really the driving force of what I do, I would say.
Fantastic. Now let's discuss some real use case examples of AI. We hear many negative news reports about AI, and yet you struck a hopeful, even guardedly optimistic note about AI. I'm intrigued. What did you mean when you said AI will challenge us to be fundamentally human? Would you kindly explain?
Yes, sure. So the first part is a historical one, is that we have no choice. And if you look back at history of humanity, it has happened all the time, that there would be a new technology that we were afraid of, and then we would first believe that it would be the end of the world, or at least the end of something. And then eventually, as we start to understand how we can use this new technology, whatever it is, I mean, Plato was worried that writing would be bad for our brain, that we would start to forget things and not be as deep anymore. That was crazy, right? And then you have another one, for instance, when they started to install all the telegraphs everywhere, people were very, very worried that because you would lay these electrical lines under the earth, that it would somehow bring out of balance the magnetic field of the earth, and the earth could collide with another planet. Not to mention when cars came. So it has happened all the time. This time is a bit particular because we have several technologies that are arriving at the same time. The last time that happened was electricity and telegraph, and it changed a lot of things. So it will change a lot of things, but it's also going probably way faster. So like I said, no choice. So let's embrace it and just see how we can find the good ways and the advantages in this new technology and utilize it and not be at the service of. The other aspect is that, for instance, in my particular field of storytelling, so often I get the question, do me storytelling, and I have first to go through a whole process with them to say, before you do a good storytelling, you have to have it, like I said before, with the roots in some values, certain aspects that are really important because they will carry the whole thing and they will give a meaning to the whole thing. Havas makes a study, has been making this study for like a dozen years now about what they call the meaningful brands. And they show that brands that are meaningful will have double the impact of others. There's a number of metrics where they show you whether it's the value of the company on the stock exchange, the value of the company in terms of the revenues it will have, returning customers. So the numbers are absolutely amazing. And it's all because the brands are focused on being meaningful. What does meaningful mean? Well, it means that you're trying to convey a message, not just like buy my stuff or come and work into my company, we're great, but it's really you share something. You have to articulate a certain vision that you have to show how you want to convert that into what is your mission and how you're going to eventually propose a value proposition to your customers. But not only, even internally working in a company, there's some sort of a value proposition of why you would choose to join a certain company. And if now we have new technologies, then obviously everyone will be doing more of the same. So I compare that like being on a marketplace with lots of noise and everyone's starting to shout louder. And the thing we've seen already now with social media, it has become very hard to stand out. It's going to be even worse now because everyone will have super professional videos and podcasts and pictures and writing and everything, except it will probably just be a little bit common. It will be a little bit unauthentic because everyone can do it. So my job then is to help people to go back and find those roots and find what is really human. And if we can manage then to use those technologies and the communication to articulate in a very powerful way what the message is about and why in the first place you wanted to express that message, then you start to stand out. Then the noise is the noise, and you can actually even whisper in a very impactful way because what you're saying now makes sense. And this is not just a theory, it's neuroscience. There's a number of things that if you do them in the right order, you will trigger the release of certain neurotransmitters. And if you have that accomplished, then your brain at some stage is like captured, and there's a window that is 4 to 8 seconds where you can plant your brand literally, and the brain just can't do anything about it.
That's really interesting. Following from that, Nico, could you tell us a little bit about, following from what he mentioned a bit about accentuating the human and the authentic. From the design perspective, tell us a bit about what happens when people come to you and they have, or perhaps already used AI, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a big shift that I've seen and noticed in the way I work with clients in the last couple of months. Before, people would come to me and say, "Can you make a logo for me?" And they would then I would do some work to understand who they are, what their values are, what the sector they're working in is, and try to make something that fits all that in terms of colors, fonts, everything. But I think nowadays what I notice is people will come to me and they've already done some generation of a logo in AI. And so they already have a starting point in that sense. And usually they'll just want me to take that starting point and then kind of build upon it. And so what I see most often is the logos they will send me, or the visuals they send me, are very basic. They're very common things that you would see, and there's not really a little touch that makes it unique. Something that when you think of the big brands that are very recognizable in terms of visual branding, Nike, Apple, Amazon, there's like that little thing that really makes it stand out, where you recognize the brand almost instantly. And that's at the moment what I'm seeing with stuff that's generated by AI, is it's missing that kind of piece that's going to make that logo stand out, or that visual stand out. And I think that's where the human aspect comes in, because as much as AI is a very powerful tool to generate things very quickly, and you can achieve some really good results with it. I think the latest announcement from OpenAI with Sora, the stuff they released on release, or when they announced the tool, the videos, you can tell they're generated by AI. They're very well made, but there's a little something about it that just strikes AI. What they did recently is they actually gave the tool to a bunch of filmmakers, and filmmakers made short films with Sora. And those short films, to me, don't scream of AI, because the filmmakers were able to use their creativity and their emotions to create something uniqueness. There's one in particular that I really liked, which was the story of a guy whose head is a balloon. And that's something that's such a fun idea, but it's something that for me is fundamentally human, because it is an idea that came from someone, but they used an AI tool to make it happen. So for me, AI is really the tool, but at the end of the day, the machine, the brain, that's us.
Yeah. So going on from that, as we are, a small podcast, and we can't offer a million solutions, but for our listeners, people who run a small business, or perhaps a one-person show or a larger company, what is one thing that they could bring, both from the storytelling aspect and then from the design aspect, to try to bring that fundamental humanity? Is that thinking about who they are a little bit more carefully, reading some books, thinking about their business from a perspective as a hero in a story? What would you suggest?
So from the storytelling point of view, there's a creative way and there's a lazy way of using AI. The lazy way is simply to say AI will do it for me or instead of me.
Yeah.
And obviously, even worse if you're a small, medium enterprise and you even rely on professionals, and if they have such an approach, then it's even worse, because then everyone will just have the same stuff.
Yeah.
If you go creatively, exactly as Nico was explaining, and you start to use this as another tool, I sometimes use the example like you're an architect, and all of a sudden you have this computer with a software that allows you to do more things, to visualize them right away. That is not that you should do or spend less time on a project. It means now you can creatively investigate further, try different things, have different renderings, and find perhaps things you wouldn't have found if you had this kind of a tool that allows you to try more things faster, more easy. And it's the same thing in writers' rooms, for instance. So a writer's room is where screenwriters get together and brainstorm to write a screenplay, for instance. A lot of people think it's like a person, but it's very often a team. The Simpsons, by the way, is like 12 people coming together every week and brainstorming together. Yeah. And so obviously an AI can become another member of the writer's room. And then it's not because the AI will tell you something, but you're going to prompt it, you're going to challenge. It's a co-pilot, and you're going to really challenge it and discuss with it. The same thing if you're thinking of a strategy, because if you want to have a good communication and you want to have the roots, so that means you have a strategic thinking ahead of that, which again you can work on with AI, and literally it's a come and go. It's not like just like do this for me, but it's like I thought about that, give me some inputs, give me some thoughts, and then you push back and you can explore further. So it's basically a tool that allows you to go deeper, easier, faster. So from an SME's point of view, it will allow them to have the results that before that were only for bigger companies, provided there's this work ahead of it. And that's what I'm doing with them, to say, let's dive deep first to understand why you do that every day. Why do you even bother doing it? And who is your audience?
Yeah.
What's their pain point? Yeah. What's their language? Let's try to talk about them in their language, not bragging about us, trying to push something onto them, because they get that all the time.
Yeah, very good. And from a visual perspective, Pascal has mentioned really trying to identify really with what your community, your consumers, what they want from you, how they're operating around your your structure. How would that be with the design language? What can you offer someone to help them appeal visually?
So I think for me, the thing that I see is people will, choose the easy way. I think going on what you said, people often choose the easy way visually, and just, when they make a presentation, for example, they're just going to pick a template just because it's easy, it's simple, and they'll just use the template, and maybe the template is not really going to match their logo or the way, the rest of their brand identity is set up. And I think that's where, a tool like AI can be useful. It's because I give maybe the basic to them, and then the AI can help them do it. There's a great tool with ChatGPT currently. I think it's a plugin that you can use within ChatGPT, which allows you to generate visuals with Canva directly. So you can prompt ChatGPT, and it creates for you a design in Canva that you can then edit. So for me, I see that as, the tools that are available, it's like it gets you started, but there's always a bit more that you have to go into, and it saves a lot of time actually. When you think about it, if instead of spending, a week trying to think of how you're gonna maybe build this presentation or make this flyer or whatever, you can just prompt the AI, get some basic idea, and then just take what the AI gives you and just iterate upon it, and do the work yourself. But instead of spending a week on it, maybe you're going to do that in a day. And I think for an SME especially, the cost saving that comes with it, that's huge, and that's a game changer in my opinion.
So maybe thoughts for a further podcast is to dive deeper a bit about the strategies and the actual services, both in storytelling and design. But I think what we can say as a summary is that AI will challenge us to be fundamentally more human if you really want to appeal to an audience in a busy and a noisy, crowded marketplace, which is by using the tools at your disposal, but driving down on what makes you unique and human.
Exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's a study, very interestingly, where they filmed a group of people that know each other, that are friends, and they interact. And then they asked actors to do the same thing. And they're great actors, so that what you saw was it looked real. And then they made the tests showing it to many people, and they discovered that the brain can, within half a second, recognize which ones were the real friends and which one was the made-up one. And so that's exactly how it functions, and that's why we need to be creative. And it's exactly, that would be my conclusion for now, is that you remember when the first websites came, people were just putting a brochure on the screen.
Yeah.
And here is exactly the same thing, and the technology is so new that we do not yet know what we can do with it. We're going to have to explore and discover, but I bet that 3 years from now, we're going to be laughing at what we are doing with AI now.
Yeah, we don't even know what we don't know.
No clue.
Exactly.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us at Soveryn Podcast, and we look forward to having you back again to discuss this very quickly evolving conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.